What if I told you that spilling coffee on the wrong person could change your entire life? Sarah Martinez thought her career was over when she soaked a billionaire's $5,000 suit. She had no idea that this mistake would lead to the most incredible revenge story you've never heard. Before we dive into this unbelievable true story, hit that like button if you love stories about karma and justice. Trust me, you won't see this twist coming. Picture this. It's 5 in the morning in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, and Sarah Martinez is already awake, carefully counting quarters and crumpled dollar bills on her kitchen table. At 28, she's been doing this dance for years, making every penny stretch, every decision calculated around her 6-year-old daughter Emma's needs. Sarah works as a waitress at the Golden Crown, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants where a single meal costs more than most people make in a week. For 2 years, she's been the perfect employee, never late, never complained, always smiling even when her feet ached from 12-hour shifts. The other staff looked down on her humble background, but Sarah didn't care. She had a dream, and every tip, every shift, every sacrifice was bringing her closer to it. You see, Sarah had been saving for 3 years to open her own little cafe. Nothing fancy, just a warm place where regular people could afford a decent meal and feel welcome. Her savings account had exactly $2,847. Not much, but it represented hope, determination, and countless nights falling asleep at the kitchen table, planning her future. Every morning, Emma would ask the same heartbreaking question. "Mama, why can't I have new shoes like the other kids?" And Sarah would kneel down, look into those innocent eyes and promise, "Someday, baby, we'll have our own place. Someday everything will be different." But Sarah had no idea how different things were about to become, and it would all start with one regular customer who made her skin crawl every time he walked through those restaurant doors. Richard Blackstone. The name alone made every staff member at Golden Crown tense up. This tech billionaire, worth $3.2 billion, treated service workers like they were invisible, like they were beneath him. He'd gotten multiple employees fired for the smallest infractions. A water glass refilled too slowly, a smile that wasn't bright enough, a simple human mistake that reminded him that regular people existed in his perfect world. Blackstone had built his fortune on what he called revolutionary AI technology, and the tech world worshipped him for it. But success hadn't made him kinder, it had made him crueler, more demanding, more convinced that his wealth gave him the right to destroy people's lives over minor inconveniences. It was a Friday night, and I need you to understand what Friday nights mean at Golden Crown. The restaurant buzzes with energy, celebrities, business moguls, people who think nothing of dropping thousands on dinner. Sarah had already been working for 12 straight hours, her feet screaming in pain, but she couldn't afford to slow down. Every table meant rent money, meant keeping Emma fed, meant staying one step ahead of the bills that never stopped coming. Then he walked in. Richard Blackstone, impeccable as always in his pristine white designer suit, flanked by important-looking business partners. The hostess rushed to seat him at his preferred table, but apparently, 2 minutes was too long for a man who believed the world should revolve around his schedule. Sarah watched from across the room as he berated the 19-year-old hostess until tears formed in her eyes. When Sarah approached his table, she forced her brightest smile. She balanced multiple plates with the expertise of someone who'd been doing this for years, moving gracefully between tables despite her exhaustion. Blackstone barely acknowledged her existence as she served his companions, treating her like she was part of the furniture. But sometimes fate has other plans. A customer's child, excited and running between tables despite his parents' protests, crashed directly into Sarah just as she was serving coffee to Blackstone's table. The collision sent hot coffee splashing across that pristine white suit, and in that moment, the entire restaurant fell silent. The humiliation that followed was beyond anything Sarah had ever experienced. Blackstone exploded with a rage that seemed completely disproportionate to what had happened. "You incompetent fool!" he screamed, loud enough for every diner to hear. "This suit costs more than you make in 6 months." Sarah's face burned with shame as every eye in the restaurant focused on her. She apologized over and over, offering to pay for cleaning, to do whatever it took to make things right. But Blackstone wasn't interested in making things right. He was interested in making an example of her. "You'll pay all right," he sneered, already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling your manager right now." Other diners started recording with their phones, capturing Sarah's humiliation for their social media feeds. She stood there, coffee dripping from her apron, watching her world collapse in real time. The manager appeared within seconds, immediately siding with Blackstone without even asking what happened. Sarah was fired on the spot, no severance, no consideration for her perfect record, no humanity whatsoever. But Blackstone wasn't finished destroying her life. He demanded $5,000 for a replacement suit, knowing full well that this amount represented months of her income. "Please," Sarah begged, her voice breaking. "I'm a single mother. I'll work extra shifts. I'll do anything to pay you back." The desperation in her voice was raw, real, heartbreaking. But Blackstone's response was ice cold. "Should have thought about that before being so clumsy." As security escorted her out, Sarah found herself crying in the alley behind the restaurant, calling her babysitter to explain why she'd be late picking up Emma, knowing she couldn't afford next month's rent, watching everything she'd worked for crumble because of 30 seconds of bad luck. The days that followed were a nightmare Sarah couldn't wake up from. She pounded the pavement, applied to every restaurant, every cafe, every place that might hire a waitress with experience. But Golden Crown's manager had made sure she wouldn't get a reference, and in the tight-knit service industry, word travels fast. Doors slammed in her face over and over again. Emma needed school supplies Sarah couldn't afford. The rent was due in 2 weeks with no income in sight. For the first time in her adult life, Sarah considered admitting defeat, packing up their tiny apartment, and moving back to her hometown where her sister lived. It felt like giving up on every dream she'd ever had, but what choice did she have? That's when fate intervened in the strangest possible way. While cleaning out her work locker at Golden Crown, Sarah found something that would change everything: Richard Blackstone's business card, dropped during the chaos of that terrible night. At first she almost threw it away, but something stopped her. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was spite, but she decided to look him up online. What she discovered made her blood run cold. Article after article praised Blackstone's company for their revolutionary AI technology that had made him billions. The interface designs, the user experience concepts, the core architecture, it all looked hauntingly familiar. Sarah stared at her computer screen, her heart pounding, because she'd seen these exact designs before. In her father's journal. Miguel Martinez had been a brilliant programmer who died in a car accident when Sarah was just 16. Everyone in the family had dismissed his late-night coding sessions as the hobby of a dreamer, his notebooks filled with complex diagrams and revolutionary concepts that seemed too advanced for their time. But as Sarah pulled out those dusty journals from her closet, she realized her father hadn't been a dreamer at all. He'd been a genius whose time had come and gone without recognition. The evidence was overwhelming. Her father's detailed notebooks contained timestamps showing his work predated Blackstone's invention by 5 years. Email receipts proved that Miguel had sent his concepts to various tech companies seeking investment, including Blackstone's firm. The same technology that had made Blackstone $3.2 billion was sitting right there in her father's handwriting, documented, dated, and ignored by a world that wasn't ready for his vision. But Blackstone had been ready. He'd taken Miguel's unpublished work and built an empire on it, claiming credit for innovations that weren't his, profiting from the brilliance of a man who died believing his ideas weren't good enough for the big leagues. As Sarah held her father's photo, tears streaming down her face, she realized that everything she'd been told about him was wrong. He wasn't just a dreamer working late into the night on impossible projects. He was a visionary whose legacy had been stolen by the same man who just destroyed her life over a coffee stain. Something fundamental changed in Sarah that night. The defeated waitress who'd been escorted out of Golden Crown was gone, replaced by a woman with a purpose that burned brighter than her fear. She took her remaining savings, money she planned to use for Emma's school clothes, and hired a consultation with a lawyer who specialized in intellectual property cases. The legal world was foreign territory for Sarah, but she learned fast. Patent law, intellectual property rights, posthumous claims, concepts that would have seemed impossible weeks ago became her new vocabulary. She discovered that her father's work wasn't just stolen. It was the foundation for multiple technologies that had made Blackstone his fortune. Building her case became Sarah's full-time job. She tracked down programmers who had worked with her father, people who remembered his innovative ideas and were willing to testify about his brilliance. She organized timestamps, gathered email evidence, and slowly built a picture of systematic theft that went beyond her father's work. Blackstone had a pattern. He built his empire by stealing ideas from small inventors who lacked the resources to fight back. When Sarah filed her lawsuit claiming ownership of the core technologies that powered Blackstone's company, the media exploded. Waitress claims Billionaire stole dead father's work became the headline that launched 1,000 think pieces about corporate greed and the little people fighting back against impossible odds. But Blackstone didn't become a billionaire by backing down from fights. He hired the most expensive lawyers money could buy and launched a vicious counterattack. Sarah was painted as a desperate gold digger, trying to exploit a tragic family loss for financial gain. Her father's work was dismissed as amateur sketches. From someone who didn't understand, Sarah would find Emma crying after kids at school repeated things they'd heard their parents say about that greedy waitress trying to steal from a successful businessman. The stress was overwhelming, but every time Sarah wanted to quit, she'd look at her father's journals and remember that this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about justice for everyone Blackstone had stepped on to build his empire. The turning point came when independent tech experts analyzed the code similarities between Miguel's original work and Blackstone's revolutionary products. The match was 99.7%, a statistical impossibility if the work had been developed independently. More importantly, other inventors started coming forward with their own stories of ideas stolen by Blackstone's company, creating a pattern too obvious to ignore. The federal government launched an investigation into Blackstone's business practices, and suddenly Sarah wasn't just a struggling single mother fighting for her family's legacy. She was the face of a movement that challenged how tech billionaires had built their fortunes on the backs of forgotten innovators. The courtroom was packed with media, supporters, and people who'd been following Sarah's incredible journey from fired waitress to David facing down Goliath. As she took the stand to testify, Sarah wasn't the broken woman who'd been humiliated in that restaurant months ago. She was composed, articulate, and devastating in her presentation of evidence. Expert witnesses confirmed what everyone already knew. The technology that had made Blackstone billions was stolen from Miguel Martinez. The timestamps were clear, the email trail was damning, and the code similarity. Blackstone's own testimony was a disaster. His arrogance, the same cruel superiority that had destroyed Sarah's life over a coffee stain, backfired spectacularly in front of a jury of regular people who saw right through his entitled act. When pressed about the stolen work, he became defensive, condescending, and ultimately revealed the character that Sarah had witnessed firsthand. The verdict was swift and brutal: $2.1 billion in damages, with rights to multiple core technologies transferred back to Miguel Martinez's estate, which meant to Sarah. Criminal charges for corporate theft followed, and suddenly the man who'd seemed untouchable was facing the possibility of prison time. But the sweetest justice was watching Blackstone's empire crumble in real time. As his stolen technologies were reclaimed, his company's value plummeted. Business partners abandoned him, investors fled, and his net worth dropped from billions to less than $100 million. Still wealthy by normal standards, but a catastrophic fall for someone who defined himself by being untouchable. When Blackstone attempted to negotiate privately with Sarah, begging her to accept a settlement that would let him keep some of his stolen fortune, her response was simple and devastating. You cost me my job over a coffee stain. You stole my father's life work and profited from it for years. Now you know how it feels to lose everything. The ultimate twist came when Sarah revealed she'd been recording that terrible night at Golden Crown on her phone, capturing Blackstone's cruel treatment. Sarah Martinez went from having $2,847 in her savings account to becoming one of the wealthiest women in America overnight. But wealth didn't change who she was at her core. Instead of seeking revenge, she chose to build something beautiful from the ashes of her ordeal. The Miguel Martinez Foundation became a beacon for struggling inventors whose ideas deserved protection and recognition. Sarah created scholarship funds for single mothers trying to build better lives for their children. And in the ultimate act of poetic justice, she bought the Golden Crown restaurant and transformed it into a community center where regular people could access resources, education, and hope. Emma now attends the best private school money can buy, but Sarah made sure her daughter stays grounded, understanding that their wealth came with responsibility to help others who were still fighting the battles they'd already won. As for Richard Blackstone, he now works at a mid-level tech job, humbled and largely forgotten by an industry that moves fast and forgives slowly. Sarah occasionally sees him at coffee shops around the city, but she's chosen grace over revenge. The $5,000 suit incident has become legend in service industry circles, a reminder that you never know whose life you're about to change with your cruelty. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. That spilled coffee wasn't a mistake, it was destiny. Sarah's father's legacy lives on, bigger and more impactful than he ever imagined, and his daughter made sure the world knows his name. If this story of justice and karma moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that good things do happen to good people. What would you have done in Sarah's situation? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories that prove the universe always keeps score.